So, good evening and a warm welcome to each one of you who's present now and who will be watching us later on YouTube. My name is Divya Shah, and today, we have come a long way. This little initiative that started during COVID has now become a platform where we have several mental health experts who are, who talk with from their wisdom, from their learnings, and they help us be better individuals. We are a growing community. We call it a happy go lucky community. So be part of this community. Follow us on Facebook and Insta, and do subscribe to us on YouTube. Help us grow because our content is very honest. All our speakers are amazing. So we have a beautiful speaker today. In fact, I have to tell you, she wasn't unwell. I mean, she wasn't well, but still she insisted that yes, it's a commitment. Let me just come and do the session. So we have Dr. Priya Puri. She is registered clinical psychologist with 10 years of experience in mental health. She has done her PhD in clinical psychology from NIMHANS, Bangalore, and which is like the top mental health institute in India. She's a trauma-informed therapist and has helped innumerable people in her 10 years span of career. And she has helped people who are who have faced some trauma or the other by means of compassion driven for trauma focused practice. And at present, Dr. Priya, she is the founder of an online mental health platform, that is the Healing Space, which has catered to the mental health needs of over 300 people in just 1 year. And we are super privileged and super honored to have Dr. Priya Puri with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Priya. It's a privilege and an honor to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Divya. And I am also really glad to be a part of this and to spread more awareness related to a particular topic which is very, very close to my heart. And I would really want people to to just reflect on what we are going to talk about today, to think about it, to just pause and to just find some time to introspect about the discussion that we are going to have today.
So why did you take, why is this topic so close to you? You just mentioned that this topic is very close to me. So why do you think this topic is so important and why people need to pay attention to it? Because uh, people are just moving on. We are all are just okay with everything that life is throwing at us, and nobody is actually pausing and giving it an introspection, giving it a thought. So why do you think this
Yes.
topic is important?
Yes. So, Divya, as you mentioned that I have been in the field of mental health for, almost 10 years. And from the time I have been in this field, I've seen that a very large part of the mental health concerns which all my clients have brought to me are something or the other to do with interpersonal relationships, right? Either being raised by parents who have been quite toxic or abusive, or being in relationships which are quite abusive or toxic, or themselves, not being able to control their emotions, not being able to control their anger and behaving in a toxic way. So I think um, so that is one reason. The other reason is for most of my clients, I have realized, and also, in some aspects of my own personal journey, I have realized that other forms of abuse, they're still more visible, right? I mean, if somebody beats you or slaps you, you know that physical abuse has happened. Or if somebody is maybe using cuss words or using abusive language, you know that verbal abuse is happening, right? Or if somebody is sexually assaulted, they know that okay, sexual assault is happening. So for all other forms of abuse, there are labels, right? You can name it, you can identify it. But for this form of abuse, for years on end, people continue to be in emotionally abusive relationships, and they don't even know that they are being emotionally abused. So that's the tricky thing, right? Which is why I thought that it is, all the more important.
Do we face abuse from our parents also?
Yes, yes. So that's a very important question, Divya. We we belong to a culture where we have been trained to think that our parents can never abuse us, right? We are trained to think that माँ बाप भगवान होते हैं, parents are like God. You should put them on a pedestal, worship them. Um, but there are two sides of it, right? Our parents can also be abusive. Now you will say that, but Priya, all of us have been scolded by our parents at some point or the other when we were kids, or sometimes maybe our parents have uh, maybe raised their hands also on us. So like, is that also abuse? Mm, so, abuse is like a consistent pattern when something is consistently done with the intent. So, there is an intent. What is the intent? The intent is to control the other person, to manipulate the other person. So, all of us have been hit, scolded, or yelled at by our parents. But for most part of it, the intention was probably not that. However, there are some parents who have that kind of an intent. So their intent is not the well-being of the child. Their intent is to control the child, how to bring this child under my control, how to make this child sort of, almost like a puppet, right? So when I see so many clients who are in extremely enmeshed and toxic relationship with their parents, adult clients, and parents are emotionally abusing them, playing mind games with them, manipulating them, financially abusing them, but the clients are not even able to understand that this is happening to them, right? And that's where this whole information regarding, okay, this is emotional abuse and boundaries need to be set. You need to work on having healthy boundaries. You need to come out of this enmeshment. That's where this entire knowledge comes into play.
Right. So, so can you give us those green flags, red flags, orange flags for a relationship? Because we might think it's love, but maybe
Hmm.
it's a abuse. Like, say, for example, say I'm married and I don't have mom, but say my mother is giving me, me suggestions and advices which are not right, but she is emotionally giving me those advices, and she is demanding my time, and I'm not able to give her time. So where do we
Hmm.
create those boundaries in such relationships where the relationship is very close knit, and हमें
Yeah.
जैसे हमें पता है कि ये हमारे अपने
Hmm.
हैं और हम इनको खोना नहीं चाहते हैं, पर हम we want to create those boundaries.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So how do we
Correct.
identify
Correct,
say,
Divya.
flags?
So I boundaries के बारे में I'll probably talk a little later. उसके पहले हम ये understand करते हैं कि emotional abuse होता क्या है, right? आजकल gaslighting और narcissism ये सब words बहुत float कर रहे हैं,
I agree.
isn't it?
Hmm.
We are very quick to label कि
Hmm.
gaslighting हो रही है, ये person narcissistic है. We've become very quick to label. Now let us first understand कि emotional abuse होता क्या है and क्यों हो रहा है, like why at all would somebody like emotionally abuse, like क्या क्या कारण हो सकता है उसका, right? So first let us try to understand that. उसके बाद we will talk about how to come out of that enmeshment and how to set boundaries. So like I said, the primary intent of the abuser is to bring the person under control by means of manipulating the other person's emotions. Okay, so and also because emotional abuse is invisible, आप अगर जाके बोलोगे मेरे साथ इमोशनल अब्यूज हुई है, आप बताओगे क्या कि क्या हुआ है मेरे साथ? सपोज इफ यू गो एंड टेल, suppose suppose there's a woman who is undergoing domestic violence, and she wants to go to the police station and do an FIR. Okay, let's take a very simple example. If physical abuse is happening, she can go and say कि मारा मुझे. Okay, sexual abuse is happening, she can say that, okay, he's forcing himself on me. या गाली गलौज हुई या कुछ और हुआ तो she can say that. Emotional abuse में what is she going to say? मेरे साथ mind games खेली, right? So the biggest thing with emotional abuse is it is invisible, and the intent is simply to bring the victim under control. okay, by playing with the victim's mind. Now, how does the abuser do that? The abuser does that through various means. One could be by humiliating the victim. No, हमेशा humiliate करते रहना, मजाक उड़ा दिया. Now I'm not talking about friendly leg pulling. I'm not talking about that. Friendly leg pulling, all of us do, and that's okay. एक limit तक ठीक है. But when it becomes very unhealthy, very toxic, where there is unnecessary name calling, labeling, जैसे कई लोग होते हैं ना, उनको आदत होती है कि वो कुछ लेबल्स लगा देते हैं, है ना, कुछ कुछ भी उस पर्सन के फिजिकल कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स के बेसिस पे या उस पर्सन के एथनिसिटी के बेसिस पे कुछ लेबल लगा दिया और बार बार
या
उस
इवन
इंसान को
इवन
उस
पेरेंट्स के लिए, जैसे कि ना तुम्हारी तुम्हारी मम्मी या तुम्हारे पापा या तुम्हारे ना, इट कैन बी लाइक दैट आल्सो.
एग्जैक्टली इट कैन बी लाइक दैट, राइट, इट कैन बी लाइक दैट. अदर देन दैट, जैसे और भी कई तरीके के लेबल्स, फॉर एग्जांपल जैसे कई होते हैं, फॉर एग्जांपल दिल्ली में फुद्दू इज अ वेरी कॉमन वर्ड दैट फ्लोट्स अराउंड इन दिल्ली, राइट, और अदर वर्ड्स जैसे घोंचू, बेवकूफ, गधा, कुछ भी,
हल्ली है.
झल्ली है, पागल है, नाटा, ठिगना, whatever, right? So that also, and when that is done repeatedly, just with the intent of putting that person down, कि उसको नीचा दिखाना, okay? So that is emotional abuse. Constant comparison, okay, belittling, um, what else? Betrayal, okay? Betray कर देना, जैसे मैरिज में betray कर दिया या फ्रेंडशिप में बिट्रे कर दिया. मतलब सपोज आपने अपना एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट सीक्रेट अपने किसी फ्रेंड को बताया और उसने आगे जाके वो और किसी को बता दिया, राइट, एंड जबकि उसको पता है दैट इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर यू, राइट. सो ऑल दीज आर एक्चुअली फॉर्म्स ऑफ इमोशनल अब्यूज. व्हाट एल्स कम्स अंडर इमोशनल अब्यूज? गैस लाइटिंग. नाउ गैस लाइटिंग इज बहुत कॉमन वर्ड है जो हम लोग सुनते हैं, गैस लाइटिंग, गैस लाइटिंग. क्या होती है गैस लाइटिंग? तो गैस लाइटिंग इज बेसिकली जहां पे व्हाट द अब्यूजर डज इज दे deny or distort what they have said or done, right? For example, they have, they will be nice to see your face because और किसी की शक्ल नहीं दिख रही.
No, no, it's perfectly fine, Arvira.
Yeah, thanks. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so gaslighting में क्या होता है? For example, suppose I say something to you with like a very clear intent of demeaning you, and then you come and say that Priya, I'm very hurt कि आपने मुझे ऐसा बोला, I didn't like it. So gaslighting would be where I simply distort it. मैंने तो ऐसा बोला ही नहीं. I deny it. मैंने तो ऐसा बोला ही नहीं. क्या बात कर रहे हो? ऐसा तो मैंने कहा ही नहीं कुछ. Or I distort it. कि you are the one who is actually having these kind of thoughts. That is why मैंने तो नहीं कहा. तुमने खुद assume कर लिया. मैंने तो कुछ बोला. Okay? Or else distorting it कि मैंने तो ऐसा नहीं वैसा बोला था. Right? बात घुमा दी, बात को twist कर दिया. So that
manipulating, I think.
Yes, manipulating, yes. So that उसका ultimate goal क्या है? ताकि आप confuse हो जाओ. Right? जैसे for example, like we were having this chat, right, where you were supposed to call me at 3:45, right? Now suppose you wanted to gaslight me, you could have called me at night that, no, you didn't send me any message, Priya. I sent you a message asking you at what time we can speak, but आपने reply ही नहीं किया. And I'm like, नहीं Divya, मैंने reply किया था, नहीं मुझे तो मिला ही नहीं. I don't know. So that is gaslighting, where the abuser is denying or distorting the facts or demeaning the facts and making the victim feel confused. The victim feels confused कि अच्छा ऐसा हुआ था या मैं ही गलत समझ रही हूँ, right? So that's the intent. So mind game, manipulation, right? Again, this again brings us to the point that which is why emotional abuse is invisible, है ना? क्योंकि आप कंफ्यूज हो गए कि क्या हो रहा है, क्या नहीं हो रहा है. आपके साथ हो रही है इमोशनल अब्यूज, बट आप कंफ्यूज हो कि ये क्या हो रहा है, शायद मेरी ही गलती है.
I think emotional abuse comes from our closest of people, and without them also realizing that what kind of harm they are doing to us, or is the abuser aware about it?
See, Divya, now, if the abuser is not aware about it, and if you tell them that, hey, आप ऐसा कर रहे हो and this is not okay, then at least they will pause, they will reflect, राइट वो पॉज करेंगे, वो रिफ्लेक्ट करेंगे, शायद वो अकाउंटेबिलिटी भी लें कि अच्छा ओ आई नेवर रियलाइज दैट आई एम हर्टिंग यू सो मच, राइट। बट बहुत सारे केसेस में क्या होता है दैट दे डोंट टेक अकाउंटेबिलिटी, okay, they use that also as an opportunity to blame it on you that तुम गुस्सा चढ़ाती हो मुझे, you are the one who does it,
You
you are the one who's
instigate me to
responsible, you
behave
are
like
you are
this.
instigating me, right? So that's what demarcates between whether they are aware of it or they are not aware of it, whether there is any intent or there is no intent, right? Because when you do something unintentionally and somebody points it out to you, you'll pause, you'll reflect कि अरे मैंने तो realize ही नहीं किया, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do it, I'll not do it again. But when there is an intent and you don't want to take accountability for what you have done, you are going to turn it back, put it on the other person that it's your fault, right? Which is why blaming and denial are also blaming and shifting the blame onto the other person.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, guilt tripping the other person.
yes, yes.
That is also actually a part of emotional abuse. So it's again, it's very tricky, which is something which I said in the beginning as well, that so many people who are being abused emotionally, उनको पता ही नहीं होता है कि उनके साथ emotional abuse हो रही है, because by the time they are fully into it, they've been guilt tripped and shamed so much that they start thinking कि शायद मेरी ही गलती है, शायद I only am doing something, they start walking on eggshells around that person कि मुझे इसको offend नहीं करना, इनको बुरा लग जाएगा. So they
So
sort of,
something like
yeah,
our mothers saying that तुम्हारे लिए मैंने इतना कुछ किया, and is that a form of emotional abuse? And my mom is no more, and I'm asking these questions, but something like so many parents make their children feel burdened by counting all the things that they have done for their child. The
अगेन
child,
दिव्या, एक एक एग्जाम्पल लेके हम एक सिंगल आउट करके एक एग्जाम्पल को हम नहीं कह सकते कि ये इमोशनल अब्यूज हो रही है, राइट? वी हैव टू सी कि इंटेंट क्या है, उस चीज की कंसिस्टेंसी कितनी है. सी ऑल ऑफ अस हैव बीन,
it has to be a repeated behavior.
exactly, all of us have at some point or the other hurt our parents and then they have told us कि we have done so much for you, right? सो वो उस मोमेंट में हुआ. बट अगर वो एक रिपीटेड पैटर्न है कि हमेशा लाइक द एंटायर इंटरेक्शन between an individual and the other person, be it parent or be it spouse or whatever, that just becomes around this only, where one person
Right,
is,
right. It has to be a repeated behavior, and it has to,
exactly,
it has to somewhere like affect the victim to an extent that the victim goes into this guilt trip, goes into that,
exactly, yes,
loophole, and that, spiral thoughts of
absolutely,
being not fine, self-doubt.
exactly.
I think creating that
Self-doubt, yes, yes. So that's, the biggest outcome of emotional abuse, right? That all the guilt tripping, shaming, blaming, denial, gaslighting, everything actually leads to a very, very high amount of self-doubt. The victim starts, to think, because I mean, see, if you are constantly being blamed for everything, you're constantly being humiliated, you're being belittled, and after doing everything, the abuser denies having done that at all. एक तो anyway those things are happening at a subtle mind game level. On top of that, the abuser denies. So what are you going to be left with? You're going to be left with a very, very high amount of self-doubt. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to think that maybe I am the problem. Maybe it's all because of me, right? And eventually, what will you do? You will start walking on eggshells around that person. You will start tiptoeing कि कहीं मैं कुछ ऐसा ना कर दूं कि इसको बुरा लग जाए, right? So that person eventually becomes the epitome of everything. They become the fulcrum that everything is just revolving around them.
So how do we identify, how do we stop it?
Yeah,
Because most of the time the abuser is almost all cases abuser is our loved one,
correct,
people whom we
correct.
love, and it's so difficult to create those boundaries. So how do we go?
Absolutely, absolutely, Divya. Now, creating boundaries with such people is also very difficult because they are really, very good at boundary violation. And also, let us remember that by the time, first of all, let us clearly remember that this kind of abuse is invisible. Okay. Secondly, let us remember that this abuse leads to a lot of self doubt. Now, एक तो this is invisible. On top of that, we are having self doubt. तो हम boundary set कैसे करेंगे? है ना? Boundary set करना ही मुश्किल है. And the third and a very important thing to understand is that with such kind of individuals, we develop something known as trauma bond. Okay, we become trauma bonded with them. So I actually, want to really highlight trauma bond before I again move to, how do we set boundaries? Because boundary set करने के process में भी we will experience a lot of guilt, right? Why will we experience a lot of guilt? One, because of self-doubt. Two, because they are going to guilt trip us. Because not having boundaries is actually going in their favor. है ना? Boundaries नहीं है तो वो उनको, it's actually being beneficial for them that they can do whatever they want, right? And the moment we start having boundaries, such individuals, the abusers, start guilt tripping us कि ओ तुम आजकल बदल गई हो. Very common thing, very very common
Yeah, this is
statement.
very common
है
in
ना?
friendships
अब तो
also.
तुम very common in friendships. I mean, the moment you want to have boundaries, you are told कि पहले तो ऐसी नहीं थी, अब तो तुम बदल गई हो, अब तो मेरी कोई कदर नहीं रह गई है. Maybe you have some other more important people
You
in your
don't need
life.
me in
You
life.
don't need me, right?
Yeah, very true.
So, before we learn about how to set boundaries, we really need to understand that with such individuals, we become trauma bonded. Now, again, some of you might have heard this term trauma bond. What is it and why, am I creating such a hype around it? Emotional abuse causes trauma, okay? Because when we are being subjected to emotional abuse, all the emotions that are coming up, we are having to suppress all of them, है ना? Because हम express तो कर नहीं पा रहे हैं, इतना guilt और इतने self doubt में हम हैं, right? Now also the abuser, what the abusers do is, it's not like 24/7 abuse चल रही है. It usually doesn't happen that way because they have to keep the victim under their control. So बीच बीच में there are pockets of nice and sweet behavior also where they are a little nice and they are a little sweet. So that keeps us hooked. Trauma bond को एक addiction के जैसे आप समझो कि जैसे for example if somebody is addicted to alcohol, they know that this is not good for me, but when they take it, it really gives them maybe whatever feeling, maybe it makes them feel very relaxed or it makes them feel calmer or whatever, right? So trauma bond is very similar to that with the abuser, one is feeling very uncomfortable, but when the abuser is finally giving that little bit of nice behavior, suddenly all that anxiety goes down. Suddenly you feel, like okay, अब तो
And you feel,
relationship
oh,
एकदम
he is
ठीक चल
not,
रहा है.
हाँ,
He is
it's a
not all
temporary
that
thing.
bad.
हाँ.
ठीक है ना, कोई बात नहीं. शायद मैं ही ओवर रिएक्ट कर रही हूँ, राइट? क्योंकि ट्रॉमा बॉन्ड गिल्ट के अराउंड भी बहुत होता है, क्योंकि हमें गिल्टी फील होता है, हम उनको विक्टिम के जैसे देखने लगते हैं. बिकॉज अब्यूजर्स के साथ ये एक बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग चीज है, स्पेशली जो लोग इमोशनली अब्यूज कर रहे हैं. एक तो ब्लेम डाल देते हैं कि यू आर इंस्टिगेटिंग, यू आर द प्रॉब्लम, राइट? ऑन टॉप ऑफ दैट वो खुद बहुत बार विक्टिम के जैसे बिहेव करते हैं कि मेरी तबीयत ठीक नहीं थी, मुझे पता नहीं चला, छोड़ो 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 इस बात को, छोड़ो इसके बारे में बात करके कोई फायदा नहीं है. सो दे गिल्ट ट्रिप. एक तो इंसान इतना थका हुआ है, ऊपर से आके तुम्हारी चै चै सुने, तो और क्या करूं मैं, राइट? So you start looking at them as a victim, you start feeling bad for them. When they abuse you, you are actually not feeling bad for yourself, you're feeling bad for them कि अरे बेचारा, right? मैंने उसको गुस्सा चढ़ा दिया. Okay, so that is trauma bond, that they are abusing you और आपको उनके लिए बुरा लग रहा है कि अरे अरे उसको इतना गुस्सा आ गया बेचारा, राइट? सो वो ट्रॉमा बॉन्ड बहुत बार हमें रोकता है बाउंड्रीज क्रिएट करने से. ओके, वो ट्रॉमा बॉन्ड रियली, आई मीन, इट जस्ट बिकम्स अ वेरी वेरी big barrier. In fact, I have seen clients who come to me and they describe their horrifically toxic marriages, and when I ask them to start setting boundaries or at least And sometimes it is so bad that I have to tell them that, okay, you need to move out of this marriage because this is very toxic for you and your kids. And they are like, नहीं मैम, मेरा हस्बैंड बेचारा, मैं कैसे उसको छोड़ दूं? अगर उसको कोई फिजिकल एलिमेंट होता तो क्या मैं उसको छोड़ देती? नहीं ना. तो अभी वो साइकोलॉजिकली अनफिट है, तो मैं कैसे छोड़ सकती हूँ? सो दैट इज ट्रॉमा बॉन्ड, यू नो. यू फील बैड फॉर देम. यू डोंट फील बैड फॉर योरसेल्फ. कोई बात नहीं, ठीक है, मेरा क्या है, मैं तो सब टॉलरेट कर लूंगी. राइट. दिस इज ट्रॉमा बॉन्ड वेयर you are feeling bad for the abuser. You're looking at them like a victim. Okay. So ये
This
जब हम
is
अंडरस्टैंड कर लेते हैं,
this is such a tricky situation because you
वेरी
know
ट्रिकी.
you are getting abused and you are trying to cover up for the abuser.
Exactly. You're getting abused. You're trying to cover up for the abuser. You're trying to rationalize it. Why? Because that's exactly, see, यही तो है. इसीलिए तो इसको इमोशनल अब्यूज कहते हैं कि आपके माइंड के साथ उस अब्यूजर ने इतना खेला that, you know, you're not realizing that you are getting abused. You feel that you are only the problem. You are only doing something to make them feel that way. कि उसको गुस्सा मेरी वजह से आ गया, मैंने गुस्सा चढ़ा दिया. राइट. मेरी ही गलती है, मैं ही ऐसा हूं या मैं ही ऐसी हूँ.
I think,
Okay.
do you think women go through such feelings a lot more?
No, Divya, you know, I have come across so many men also who are getting emotionally abused by their parents, by their wives. So, you know, it's not, I mean,
Okay.
it's not like gender based. So there are many men also. Men are less vocal, you know. Men are
Women
less vocal,
women
women
speak
are,
up, right?
exactly. Women speak up, and see, also because in our culture, men have been sort of conditioned to not express much,
Hide their
not be
emotions.
woke about their emotions, do not cry, right? So men have different coping mechanisms. Women have different coping mechanisms. Women talk, they ventilate more. So ऐसा लगता है कि women के साथ ही हो रहा है, but men also go through this quite a lot.
Right. Sorry, you were saying something and I cut you in between. Please go
No,
ahead.
no, no. That's okay. I was just, you know, talking about trauma bond and how it just makes the entire thing very tricky, and
Yes,
how, you
yes.
know, and which is why, you know, so many people keep going back and forth, back and forth. They want to set boundaries. They want to, you know, set boundaries. They want to have that very clear
Yeah.
demarcation. But then they keep going back because the moment a boundary is set, they have another game to play. Maybe they may start crying. They may start, you know, making the person feel guilty for setting boundaries. So you again go back. "अरे, अरे, नहीं, 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 मुझे तुमको
I've seen
hurt नहीं
in so
करना."
many marriages, the say for example, the man offending the lady, and the lady, thinking that okay, now I'll create boundaries, but then one fine day the guy talks emotionally and nicely, and the girl
Exactly.
forgives everything, and she's like, oh,
Exactly. And that's
बहुत
exactly
stress,
what trauma bond is.
बहुत
That's
stress था
exactly what
काम
trauma
का.
bond is. Yes. So, you know, you just keep doing back and forth, which is why, you know, reminding yourself that what you've been through. Okay, अगर आपको बाउंड्री सेट करनी है, इस तरह के इंडिविजुअल्स के साथ बाउंड्री सेट करना बिल्कुल इजी नहीं है. नॉट इजी एट ऑल, बिकॉज they do not respect boundaries. They do not understand the concept of boundary. And, you know, there's a lot of hypocrisy in how they deal with things. For them, there's a different set of rules. But for others, कोई rules मानने की जरूरत नहीं है. Right? So it becomes very tricky.
Right. So how do we deal with it? How do we come
Yes.
out?
Yes,
Let's
that's,
talk
you know, that's,
solutions now.
yes, let's talk solutions. Absolutely. Problem के बारे में बात करने से नहीं होगा.
Huh.
So the first thing is, you know, develop awareness. Maybe, you know, talk to friends, counselors, or join support groups. क्योंकि सबसे पहले अवेयरनेस बिल्ड करनी पड़ेगी, राइट? क्योंकि इतना सेल्फ डाउट होता है ना इसमें, दिव्या, इतना सेल्फ डाउट होता है कि आप कई बार खुद कंफ्यूज हो जाते हो कि मेरे साथ वाकई कुछ अब्यूज हुआ है या मैं ही ओवर थिंक कर रही हूँ, क्योंकि आपको ऐसे ट्रेन कर दिया गया है, राइट? इस तरह के अब्यूजिव रिलेशनशिप्स में, बाय कॉन्स्टेंटली पुटिंग ब्लेम, बाय गैस लाइटिंग, बाय गिल्ट ट्रिपिंग, बाय शेमिंग, इतना कंफ्यूजन पैदा कर दिया जाता है दैट, यू नो, यू फॉरगेट कि ऐसा हुआ था या मैं ही इमेजिन कर रही हूँ, या उसका शायद ऐसा इरादा नहीं था, शायद मैं ओवर थिंक कर रही हूँ. सो First step is build awareness. Read about it. Read about emotional abuse. Read about narcissism. रीड अबाउट टॉक्सिक रिलेशनशिप्स. पढ़ो, क्योंकि जब आप उस चीज को पढ़ोगे या और लोगों के एक्सपीरियंसेस सुनोगे, आप उससे रिलेट कर पाओगे, राइट? सो आफ्टर यू बिल्ड अवेयरनेस, दैट अवेयरनेस इज ऑल्सो नॉट गोइंग टू स्टे. द मोमेंट दैट पर्सन इज अगेन नाइस टू यू फॉर फ्यू डेज, यू विल फॉरगेट दैट कुछ आपके साथ अब्यूज हुआ भी था. सो after one builds awareness, it is important to have some kind of a support system, right? Support system can be in the form of friends who are genuine, right? Friends who are genuine, friends who understand. Support system can be in the form of some kind of a support group. It can be in the form of some kind of a community, right? जैसे कुछ आजकल on Facebook there are these support groups. Okay, some of them are genuine, some of them are not. I can share links of the ones which I know are authentic. सो इस तरीके की कम्युनिटी को जब हम ज्वाइन करते हैं, जहाँ पे और लोग भी अपने एक्सपीरियंसेस के बारे में बात करते हैं, आर एक्सपीरियंसेस गेट वैलिडेटेड. हमें फिर लगता है कि मेरे नॉट लाइक आई एम इमेजिनिंग, वाकई ऐसा हो रहा है, राइट? कनेक्टिंग विथ योर सेल्फ, लिसन टू योर बॉडी, लिसन टू व्हाट यू आर फीलिंग इन द प्रेजेंस ऑफ दैट पर्सन, राइट? जैसे अगर उस इंसान के प्रेजेंस में आपको हमेशा ही एंजाइटी हो रही है, घबराहट हो रही है. For example, I have some clients who have told me that the moment my husband enters, उसकी जैसी गाड़ी की आवाज आती है, मेरी लिटरली पूरी बॉडी ठंडी हो जाती है, राइट? या जैसे ही लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल वन क्लाइंट वाज टेलिंग मी अबाउट हिज चाइल्डहुड एक्सपीरियंस दैट जब तक सिर्फ मम्मी और हम लोग होते थे घर पे, तो यूज्ड टू एंजॉय अ लॉट. जैसे ही पापा आते थे और पापा के फुटस्टेप्स की आवाज आती थी या गाड़ी का हॉर्न बजता था, वी यूज्ड टू जस्ट फ्रीज. हम लोग बस एकदम चुप हो जाते थे कि कुछ मत करो, डांट पड़ जाएगी, डांट पड़ जाएगी, राइट? एंड दैट वाज लाइक अ डे इन डे आउट काइंड ऑफ अ थिंग. Okay, so just observe, how are you feeling in the presence of that person at large, not once in a while, at large, right? So building awareness, identifying your social support network, observing yourself, observing how you're feeling in the presence of that person, in the absence of that person, right? And slowly then starting to set boundaries. Now those boundaries can be in the form of being assertive with that person, telling them that, look, I am not up for this kind of behavior. When you are in a saner headspace, we will talk. And if you're going to talk to me like this, sorry, we cannot have a conversation, right? So signing out of the conversation the moment they start abusing you. Okay, so something of that sort can be done. So being assertive. Then there's something called the gray rock method. You all can look up, search it and read more about it. So ग्रे रॉक मेथड में क्या होता है, जब आपको पता चल गया कि सामने वाला ऐसा है, टॉक्सिक है, और एंड फॉर सम रीजन आपको उस इंसान के साथ सर्वाइव करना है ना, मे बी दैट पर्सन इज अ कलीग, यू लव योर जॉब बट वो कलीग बहुत तंग कर रहा है, या मे बी एवरीथिंग इज ओके बट घर
That's
में.
right. That's what I think. There's a question for you. Toxic work culture in company. These days, people get so much stressed out at work, and
Yes.
the boss is abusing, and even HR is not able to do anything. So how can we
See, in
survive the
that kind of a
situation?
culture, okay, I mean, if it is a job where बॉस के ऊपर कोई है and you can escalate, तो वो करना चाहिए. अगर आप escalate नहीं कर पा रहे हो, आपका बॉस ही let's say स्टार्टअप है जहाँ पे बॉस ही सीईओ है या मतलब डायरेक्टर है या समथिंग, तो वहां पे आप उसके ऊपर तो कहीं नहीं पहुंच सकते. अगर एक आप इस तरीके के सिस्टम में हो where there is somebody above the boss highlighting these problems to that person, asking them to change your team or something, because see, the thing is that with some people you can't be assertive because वो जीना मुश्किल कर देते हैं. Okay, like when I was at Nimhans, in Nimhans is a very, very structured organization, extremely structured. Like the entire thing is divided into departments. Departments are divided into units. Units may be मतलब multiple faculty and बहुत structured है. तो वहाँ पे in my particular team there was one faculty who had just joined, and for some reason she hated me. Like she just hated me. She hated me because so I was not under her, I was under my guide, एंड बिकॉज आई वॉज नॉट अंडर हर, सो मुझे ये जरूरत नहीं लगती थी कि मैं हर समय जाके उनसे परमिशन लूँ. आई मीन जस्ट बिकॉज वो उस टीम में है doesn't mean कि I have to constantly take permission. So I used to just take permission from my guide for everything, which is how I was supposed to do also. But she was not okay with it, and she had started playing these really weird games with me. Mere leaves, for some reason, she would just keep rejecting. I was always overburdened with work, all of that. And being assertive was also not helping. Being assertive was also not helping, and unnecessary complaints were going against me for no good reason. So what I had to do finally was I had to approach, above her. I had to reach out to the HOD, and I had to tell the HOD that this is what is happening. Please take some action about it, and then necessary things were done. सो इस तरीके की अगर प्रॉब्लम है तो असर्टिव होने से नहीं काम चलेगा, बिकॉज अगर आप असर्टिव हैं तो आपको और परेशान किया जाएगा. सो देन यू हैव टू लुक फॉर वेज ऑफ मूविंग आउट ऑफ दैट प्लेस, either looking for a better job, a different job. और अब इसी बहुत लोग बोलते हैं कि आप तो एडवाइस दे रहे हैं कि भाग जाओ उस सिचुएशन से. हाँ, सर्वाइव करना ही इंपॉर्टेंट है. अब वो आप भाग के सर्वाइव कर रहे हो या आप वहां रह के लड़के फाइट कर रहे हो या फ्लाइट कर रहे हो, सर्वाइव करना इंपॉर्टेंट है. फाइट कर सकते हो तो वेरी गुड. फाइट अगर नहीं कर सकते हो तो आपके सर्वाइवल के लिए अगर फ्लाइट करना इंपॉर्टेंट है तो फ्लाइट करो. लीव दैट सिचुएशन. यू डोंट हैव टू अननेसेसरीली प्रूव टू योर सेल्फ कि ओ नहीं नहीं नहीं, आई एम बिग शेर, मैं तो टॉलरेट कर लूंगा. नहीं, शेर बनने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. सर्वाइव करना इंपॉर्टेंट है. ओके. सो इन दीज काइंड ऑफ कल्चर्स, वर्क कल्चर्स, if you can escalate, you should. If you think that escalation will worsen everything, okay, then think of a well planned strategic exit strategy. एंड जब तक, चाहे वो वर्क प्लेस में हो चाहे और किसी सिचुएशन में हो, जब तक आप एग्जिट स्ट्रैटेजी अपनी प्लान नहीं कर पा रहे हो, तब तक इंडल्ज इन ग्रे रॉक. व्हाट इज ग्रे रॉक? हैव बेयर मिनिमम कॉन्वर्सेशन विथ द अब्यूजर एंड डू नॉट एंगेज. उसको समझाने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है, उसके साथ इंडल्ज करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है, आर्ग्यू करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. Just your answers with that person, be it a family member or your boss or a colleague, just limit it to acha, oh, like just one liners or one word answers. Do not indulge, do not give out your emotions, because the moment you do that, they thrive on this. They thrive on making you feel horrible. So find other places where you're going to seek emotional support, but उस इंसान को समझाने मत जाओ, बिकॉज जैसे ही आप समझाने जाओगे उन्होंने और आपको गैसलाइट कर देना है. राइट. So yeah, so
This is such an important answer that you gave. So many people are working and having terrible workplaces, toxic work culture, and
yeah,
especially when you are not that experienced, when you have newly joined industry, you are there are not enough jobs around. You want experience, you have a family to take care of, and it's very important that during this time you don't know whether you want to leave, do what. So in that case it's very important that we get guidance and we know what to do.
absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you
Yes,
so much,
yes.
Dr. Priya Puri.
Thank
It
you,
was
thank you,
beautiful having you.
Divya. Thank you so much.